The Amazon rainforest held many secrets, but Dr. Samira Patel never expected to find one that would change the course of human history. The humid evening air clung to her skin as she collected samples from a rare flowering vine, its bioluminescent petals casting an ethereal blue glow in the growing darkness. Her research into the medicinal properties of indigenous plants had brought her to this remote corner of Brazil, far from her comfortable laboratory in Mumbai. The first sign that something was amiss came not from her eyes, but from her equipment. The sophisticated spectrometer she used to analyze plant compounds began registering impossible readings, energy signatures that defied known physics. Then came the sound, a high-pitched whine that seemed to slice through the canopy itself, followed by a thunderous impact that shook the ground beneath her feet. Samira's scientific curiosity overrode her instinct to run. Following the trail of broken branches and disturbed earth, she emerged into a freshly created clearing. There, half buried in smoking soil, lay what could only be described as a ship, though unlike any aircraft she'd ever encountered. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury, despite being clearly solid. "Stay back." The voice came from behind her, speaking perfect English but with an accent that seemed to dance between octaves. Samira turned slowly, raising her hands to show they were empty. The sight before her defied everything she thought she knew about life in the universe. The warrior stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a shifting pattern of iridescent scales that seemed to mirror the forest around her. But what struck Samira most were her eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, each one containing swirling galaxies of deep purple and gold. In her arms, she cradled what was clearly a child, though one that appeared to be made partly of living crystal. "Your atmosphere, it's safe for us, but Kenna is injured." The warrior's voice carried both threat and desperate plea. "I am Naira Vashtil of the Ethorian Guard, and I will defend my daughter with my life if necessary." "But—" she faltered, her scaled armor shifting uneasily. "We need help." Samira's medical training kicked in. "I'm a doctor, not the kind that treats people, but I understand biology and chemistry. Let me see what I can do." She took a cautious step forward, noting how the warrior's free hand rested on what appeared to be a weapon at her hip. The child, Kenna, stirred weakly. Unlike her mother's scaled appearance, her skin seemed to flow between crystalline transparency and flowing liquid, with currents of light pulsing beneath the surface. A deep crack ran along her left side, leaking what looked like starlight. "Our healing technology was damaged in the crash," Naira explained, her 3 eyes never leaving Samira's face. "We were pursued here, across 12 galaxies. Earth was not our intended destination, but our ship's quantum drive malfunctioned during the last jump." As Samira approached, she noticed something extraordinary. The bioluminescent flowers she'd been studying earlier seemed to react to Kenna's presence, their glow intensifying and shifting to match the child's internal light. "The plants," she whispered. "They're responding to her energy signature." Naira's eyes widened. "Impossible. Unless—" The legends of our ancestors spoke of worlds where life force flowed freely between all things. We lost such connections eons ago, through our technological evolution. Perhaps. A distant sound of helicopter rotors interrupted her. Naira tensed, her scaled armor bristling with what looked like living electricity. "Your people come." "My research station is 3 kilometers north," Samira said quickly. "It's private, isolated. I can help you there, and we can figure out what's causing this reaction with the local flora. But we have to move now." For a moment, Naira stood motionless, her warrior's training visibly warring with her maternal instincts. Finally, she nodded. "If you betray us, understand that I am capable of destroying everything within 1,000 kilometers." "I believe you," Samira replied calmly. "But I don't think you will. Because right now, I'm the best chance your daughter has." She paused, then added, "And maybe, just maybe, whatever brought you to Earth wasn't an accident at all. As they disappeared into the darkening forest, the bioluminescent flowers pulsed in their wake, marking a trail that would soon fade, but the changes set in motion that night would ripple across two worlds and beyond, forever altering the destiny of both species. Dawn broke over the Amazon research station as Samira keyed in the security code to her private laboratory. The events of the previous night still felt surreal, but the presence of her two otherworldly companions made it impossible to dismiss as a dream. Naira ducked her head to enter the climate-controlled space, her scaled armor reflecting the morning light in mesmerizing patterns. This equipment, Naira observed, her three eyes scanning the laboratory. It's primitive, but I sense potential. She gently laid Kenna on the examination table, the child's crystalline form now dulled with fatigue. Samira tried not to take offense at the word primitive. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most elegant, she replied, already pulling up molecular analysis programs on her computer. Those flowers that reacted to Kenna, they might be more than just a coincidence. The door chimed, making Naira instantly tense. "Auntie Sam," a young voice called out. "Are you in there?" "It's okay," Samira assured Naira. "That's my nephew, Raj. He helps me with my research during school holidays." She opened the door to reveal a bright-eyed 12-year-old boy, who stopped dead in his tracks at the sight of their visitors. Instead of screaming or running, Raj's face lit up with wonder. "Whoa! Are you guys aliens? Like, real ones? That's so cool." His enthusiasm made Kenna stir, her crystalline features shifting to reveal a smile that sparkled like diamonds. "I'm Kenna," she said softly, her voice chiming like wind through crystal. "I've never met a human child before." While the children began to cautiously interact, Samira and Naira focused on the urgent task at hand. The warrior revealed more about their desperate mission. A devastating plague was spreading across Ethoria, their homeworld, turning their crystalline cities to dust and causing their people to lose their ability to shift forms. "Our scientists believed Earth's remarkable biodiversity might hold the key," Naira explained, projecting a holographic image of Ethoria from a device on her wrist. The planet looked like a jewel carved from living crystal, but dark patches marred its surface. "We were not the only ones sent to search for a cure, but we are the only ones who made it past the blockade." "Blockade?" Samira asked, looking up from her analysis of Kenna's unique cellular structure. "There are those who would rather see Ethoria fall than allow us to seek help from less advanced worlds." Naira's scales rippled with emotion. "Pride has always been our people's greatest weakness." Their work was interrupted by approaching footsteps in the corridor. Dr. Patel, a thick Russian accent, called out. "I need to discuss these energy readings from last night." Samira's heart sank. Dr. Viktor Petrov, her brilliant but ruthlessly ambitious colleague, had apparently detected something unusual. "Hide," she whispered urgently to Naira and Kenna. The alien warrior grabbed her daughter and seemed to shimmer before their forms blended perfectly with the laboratory wall, their chromatophores adapting to match the surroundings. Victor burst in without waiting for a response, his pale eyes intense behind wire-rimmed glasses. "These signatures are unprecedented," he declared, thrusting a tablet toward Samira. "They match nothing in our database. And look at these cellular mutations in the local flora. It's as if something triggered an evolutionary leap overnight." "Dr. Petrov," Samira began, but he cut her off. "I've already contacted some colleagues at the Institute. They're very interested in our findings." His thin lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We could be on the verge of something revolutionary." Samira felt a chill run down her spine. If Victor had already shared data about the energy signatures, it wouldn't be long before others came looking. She needed to buy time. "The readings were probably equipment malfunction," she said carefully. "Let me verify everything before we make any announcements. You know how funding committees are about preliminary results." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps. But I'll be monitoring the situation closely. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Dr. Patel? You might want to explain why your nephew is here during a Level 3 research operation. After he left, Naira and Kenna rematerialized. He suspects something, Naira stated flatly, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. No violence, Samira said firmly. Victor is suspicious and ambitious, but he's not our enemy. Not yet. Besides, we have bigger problems. If he contacted his research network, others will come investigating. Raj, who had remained remarkably quiet during the exchange, spoke up. What about the old research station? The one in the river valley that got flooded last year? Nobody goes there anymore. Samira considered this. The abandoned station would have basic equipment, solar power, and most importantly, privacy. But moving there would mean leaving behind most of her advanced analytical tools. Before she could respond, Kenna suddenly gasped, her crystalline form pulsing with intense light. Where her hand touched the examination table, tiny crystals began to form, spreading in a beautiful but alarming pattern. It's happening here too, Naira whispered, real fear in her voice for the first time. The plague followed us. We have less time than I thought. The crystals continued to spread, and with them came a terrible choice: protect their secret and risk losing everything, or reach out for help and potentially doom 2 worlds in the process. The abandoned research station loomed before them in the pre-dawn light, its walls covered in trailing vines and moss. Samira guided their small boat to the partially submerged dock, while Naira kept watch, her scaled armor shifting colors to match the misty morning air. They had worked through the night to transfer essential equipment from the main facility, always staying one step ahead of Victor's increasingly suspicious surveillance. The solar panels still work, Raj announced proudly, having raced ahead to check the station's systems. Despite the gravity of their situation, the boy had maintained an infectious enthusiasm that even brought occasional smiles to Naira's usually stern features. And the backup generators are above the flood line. Kenna floated beside him, her crystalline form now containing visible fracture lines that pulsed with concerning frequency. The plague was progressing faster than anyone had anticipated. Where she passed, plants either crystallized or underwent bizarre mutations, their cellular structure trying to adapt to her otherworldly presence. The isolation might buy us time, Samira said, unloading delicate scanning equipment from the boat, but we're working against multiple deadlines now. Victor's research team arrives in 3 days, and... She glanced meaningfully at Kenna. And my daughter grows weaker, Naira finished, her 3 eyes focusing on the horizon. There's something else. Last night, I detected encrypted quantum communications in high orbit. My people have found us. Inside the station, they set up a makeshift laboratory. Samira had brought her most crucial equipment, genetic sequencers, molecular analyzers, and the specialized botanical testing units she'd developed for her research. Naira supplemented these with sophisticated Ethorian devices that seemed to operate on principles that defied Earth physics. The plague isn't just a disease, Naira explained, projecting complex diagrams into the air. It's affecting the fundamental way our people interface with quantum reality. We evolved to exist partially in multiple states, like your Earth's theoretical quantum superposition. But something is forcing us to collapse into a single, rigid form. Samira studied the readings from both their technologies. These patterns, they're similar to what we're seeing in the mutated plants. It's like your quantum nature is trying to impose itself on Earth's classical biology, and the plants are caught between states. A sharp cry from outside interrupted their discussion. They rushed out to find Raj backing away from a patch of flowers that had completely crystallized, their petals transformed into perfect geometric patterns that caught the sunlight like prisms. I didn't touch them, Kenna said, her voice trembling. It's spreading on its own now. Samira knelt to examine the crystallized plants, her mind racing. Wait, look at this. She pointed to where normal plants met the crystallized ones. The boundary layer, there's something happening here. The plants aren't just being transformed, they're trying to adapt. Naira's scales shifted to deep purple with interest. Explain. Earth's biosphere has had billions of years to develop resilience through adaptation, Samira said, carefully taking samples. These plants aren't just victims of the quantum plague, they're actively responding to it. And look here. She indicated a small cluster of flowers that seemed to exist in both states simultaneously, organic and crystalline. A natural quantum superposition? Naira breathed. But that should be impossible in Earth's environment. Their breakthrough was interrupted by a distant humming that made the air vibrate. Naira's expression hardened as she activated her armor's full combat systems, the scales now rippling with barely contained energy. Multiple aircraft approaching, she announced. Military grade, but not your Earth technology. She turned to Samira, all three eyes glowing with intensity. They're ahead of schedule. The Ethorian recovery fleet must have detected the plague signature. Raj grabbed Kenna's hand protectively. What do we do? Samira looked at her equipment, then at the partially transformed plants. We're close to something. These hybrid state plants, they're not just surviving, they're thriving. If we can understand how they're managing it. A new sound cut through the air, helicopter rotors. Earth forces too, Naira growled. Your colleagues' research network must have raised alarms. They were trapped between two worlds now, each rushing to contain what they saw as a threat. But Samira couldn't shake the feeling that they were all missing the bigger picture. The plague wasn't just a disease to be cured, it was forcing an evolution, a bridge between quantum and classical reality. Naira, she said urgently, what if the plague isn't what we thought? What if it's not destroying your people's quantum nature, but trying to help you adapt to interact with classical matter? Like how these plants are finding a middle ground? The warrior's response was cut short by the appearance of sleek, silvery craft breaking through the clouds above them. At the same time, the distinctive shapes of military helicopters appeared on the horizon. No time for theories now, Naira said, positioning herself between the approaching forces and their makeshift laboratory. We need to protect our work, or both our worlds could pay the price. Kenna suddenly straightened, her crystalline form pulsing with new energy. Mom, Dr. Patel, look. Where she stood, the plants weren't crystallizing anymore. Instead, they were taking on a beautiful hybrid form, like living stained glass that still grew and moved. The children, Samira whispered. They're adapting faster than we are. Kenna and Raja's friendship, it's not just symbolic. It's showing us the way forward. But would either side listen? As their hidden riverside laboratory became the center of a gathering storm, Samira realized they weren't just racing against time anymore, they were racing against the rigid thinking of two civilizations, each too set in their ways to see that salvation lay not in resistance, but in adaptation. The air crackled with tension as Ethorian ships and Earth military forces converged on the abandoned research station. Naira stood at the center of the chaos, her armor now fully activated and humming with defensive energy. Behind her, Samira worked frantically to document their breakthrough while Raj and Kenna huddled near the hybrid plants that might hold the key to everything. Attention Earth vessels, a resonant voice boomed from the lead Ethorian ship. This is Commander Thyrix of the Recovery Fleet. You have been harboring fugitives carrying a Class 1 biological threat. Stand down and withdraw. The military helicopters held their position, spotlights cutting through the morning mist. This is Colonel Diana Reeves of the Global Defense Force, came the response. We are detecting an unknown biological agent spreading through the rainforest. Withdraw your vessels from Earth space immediately. Naira's scales rippled with frustration. They're both wrong, she muttered. And they'll destroy everything in their fear. She raised her voice to address both sides. I am Naira Vashtiel of the Ethorian Guard. My daughter and I came seeking help, and we found it, but not in the way anyone expected. Samira stepped forward, holding up a tablet displaying their findings. The crystallization isn't a plague, it's an evolutionary response. Both our worlds need to understand what's really happening here. A familiar voice cut through the standoff. Dr. Patel is correct. Viktor Petrov emerged from one of the helicopters, but his demeanor had changed. Gone was the ruthless ambition, replaced by genuine scientific wonder. I've been monitoring the plant mutations. This is beyond anything we could have imagined. The Ethorian ships descended closer, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the rising sun. Commander Thyrix's voice held a note of curiosity now. Explain. Kenna suddenly moved to the center of the gathering, her crystalline form glowing with newfound strength. Where she walked, plants transformed not into rigid crystals, but into flowing, living artwork that merged organic and quantum states. I can show you, she said, her voice carrying clearly to all present. Raj joined her, unafraid. The plants aren't dying, they're evolving. Just like Kenna and I learned to understand each other, the plants are learning to exist in both worlds. Samira quickly explained their discovery. The quantum plague isn't a disease, it's your bodies trying to adapt to interact with classical matter. The plants showed us that resistance only makes it worse. The solution is to embrace the change, to find a middle ground between quantum and classical states. Commander Thyrix materialized on the ground, his form more crystalline than Naira's but sharing similar features. He approached one of the hybrid plants, studying its impossible existence. This defies everything we thought we knew about quantum biology. Colonel Reeves had also descended from her helicopter, though she maintained a cautious distance. You're saying these aliens aren't invading, they're evolving? And somehow our plants are helping them? More than helping, Victor interjected, his scientific passion overtaking his previous suspicions. Look at these readings. The hybrid plants are more resilient, more efficient at photosynthesis. They're not just surviving, they're thriving in ways we never thought possible. Naira placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, her scales shifting to match the iridescent patterns of the hybrid flora. For generations, we thought our quantum nature made us superior, separate from classical life forms. We were wrong. This isn't about superiority, it's about synthesis. The tension in the air began to shift into something else, wonder. Scientists from both sides cautiously approached the transformed vegetation, their instruments recording what should have been impossible. The hybrid plants continued to spread, but now everyone could see it wasn't an invasion, it was an invitation to evolution. Mom, Kenna said softly, I don't feel sick anymore. Her form had stabilized into something new, neither purely crystalline nor purely quantum, but a harmonious blend that seemed to flicker between states while remaining whole. Commander Thyrix conferred with his ship's systems. The quantum readings, they're stabilizing across all frequencies. How did we not see this before? Because sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the smallest moments of connection, Samira answered, watching Raj and Kenna interact with the transformed ecosystem. Your people needed our biological diversity, but not to find a cure, to find a new way of being. Colonel Reeves stepped forward. This is going to change everything. Both our worlds will need guidance through this transition. Then let's give them something to believe in, Naira said, deactivating her combat systems completely. She turned to Samira. You trusted us when you had every reason not to. Perhaps it's time for both our peoples to learn from that example. As the sun rose fully over the Amazon, Earth and Ethorian forces began to cooperate, setting up a joint research station around the hybrid zone. The crystalline ships no longer seemed alien against the sky, their surfaces now reflecting the same impossible patterns as the evolving rainforest below. Samira watched as Raj taught Kenna about Earth plants while she showed him how to see quantum patterns in seemingly solid matter. In their innocent exchange lay the template for humanity's first true steps into a larger universe, not through conquest or competition, but through adaptation and understanding. The morning air hummed with possibility as two worlds began the delicate process of learning to exist together, their differences becoming not obstacles but opportunities for transformation. And at the heart of it all, a small patch of hybrid flowers continued to grow, showing everyone who cared to look that the future belonged not to those who resisted change, but to those brave enough to embrace it. 6 months after the convergence at the Amazon Research Station, the world had changed in ways few could have imagined. The hybrid zone, as it came to be known, had grown into a thriving research center where Earth and Ethorian scientists worked side by side. The crystalline organic fusion that began in that small patch of rainforest had sparked a revolution in both societies' understanding of life itself. Samira stood at her new laboratory window, watching Kenna and Raj lead a group of Earth and Ethorian children through the transformed gardens. Kenna's form had stabilized into a beautiful synthesis of crystalline and organic matter, setting an example for her people's evolution. Where once her touch brought uncontrolled crystallization, she now could guide the transformation process, helping plants and even simple organisms find their own balance between quantum and classical states. The latest results from Ethoria are promising, Naira said, entering the lab. Her warrior's armor had been modified to incorporate Earth biomaterials, creating a seamless blend of both worlds' technologies. The hybrid algorithms you developed have helped over 70% of our population achieve stable transformation. Samira turned from the window, smiling at her friend. Their partnership had become the template for cooperation between their species. And the resistance? Are they still causing problems? Some still cling to pure quantum existence, Naira admitted, her scales shifting in a pattern that Samira had learned to read as thoughtful concern. But it's hard to argue with success. Our cities are no longer crystallizing chaotically, they're evolving, becoming living environments that respond to their inhabitants' needs. The laboratory itself reflected this new reality. Earth computers interfaced seamlessly with Ethorian quantum processors, while hybrid plants grew in carefully monitored conditions, their impossible biology providing insights into everything from energy production to medicine. Viktor Petrov, who had become one of their strongest allies, burst into the lab with his usual enthusiasm. Dr. Patel, Guardian Vashtil, you need to see this. He pulled up a holographic display showing cellular activity at the quantum level. The fungal networks in the rainforest floor, they're not just adapting, they're creating new forms of quantum entanglement between Earth and Ethorian biology. The mycorrhizal networks, Samira breathed, understanding dawning. They've always been Earth's natural communication system. Now they're becoming something more, a bridge between our worlds. Commander Thyrix, now Earth-Ethorian Relations Director, materialized in the laboratory through one of the newly developed quantum portals. His formerly rigid crystalline form now flowed with organic patterns. The Council has reviewed your latest findings, he announced. They're ready to proceed with the next phase. The next phase was something Samira and Naira had proposed months ago, the establishment of permanent hybrid zones around the planet, carefully monitored areas where Earth's biosphere could gradually merge with Ethorian quantum biology. Not a takeover, but a cooperative evolution that would benefit both worlds. Mom! Dr. Patel. Kenna's excited voice rang through the lab as she and Raj rushed in. We found something amazing in the butterfly garden. The children's faces glowed with discovery, literally, in Kenna's case, her crystalline features bright with excitement. They followed the children to the garden, where a spectacular sight awaited them. A new species of butterfly had emerged, its wings shifting between solid matter and quantum energy fields, leaving trails of light as it flitted between flowers that existed in multiple states at once. It was beautiful, impossible, and yet perfectly natural, evolution finding its own path forward. Colonel Reeves, now head of the Global Adaptation Task Force, joined them in the garden. It's happening faster than we predicted, she said, watching the butterfly dance between states. But somehow, life just knows what to do. It always has. My mother used to tell me stories, Naira said softly, watching her daughter gently coax the butterfly onto her finger, its wings harmonizing with her own quantum signature. About a time when our people were less rigid, when we understood that strength comes not from purity but from adaptation. I never understood until now. Samira looked at the gathering, humans and Ethorians, scientists and soldiers, adults and children, all working together to shepherd this unprecedented evolutionary leap. We thought we were looking for a cure, she said, but what we really found was a future. One that neither of our worlds could have reached alone. As the sun set over the transformed Amazon, its light playing through the crystalline organic canopy in ways that defied old understandings of physics, Samira reflected on how far they'd come. What had started with a desperate crash landing had become the greatest adventure in human and Ethorian history, not a story of invasion or conflict, but of growth, adaptation, and the remarkable things that could happen when different worlds came together. Raj and Kenna had started teaching other children how to see, in both quantum and classical ways, their natural acceptance of each other's differences spreading like ripples through both societies. The fear that had initially greeted the crystalline transformations had given way to wonder as people realized this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. You know, Naira said, watching the children play, on Ethoria, we have an ancient saying, the universe flows like water, finding new paths when old ones end. We forgot that wisdom once. Thanks to Earth, thanks to you, we're remembering it again. The hybrid butterfly landed on a nearby flower, its wings catching the last rays of sunlight in a display that would have been impossible 6 months ago. But impossible things were becoming routine now, as two worlds learned to dance together in a new kind of harmony, their differences becoming the very thing that made them stronger. Above them, the first permanent quantum organic space station was taking shape in orbit, a gleaming symbol of cooperation visible from both Earth and Ethoria. It would serve as a bridge between worlds, a place where the next generation of both species could learn from each other and explore the vast possibilities their new combined potential offered. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and discoveries waiting to be made. But now they would face them together, two worlds becoming something greater than either could have been alone. And it had all started with a warrior, a scientist, and two children who were brave enough to imagine a different way forward.